Hi, welcome to Jot Notes, a podcast where we dive into the world of books and the lives of authors. My name is Jenna Green, and I'm a YA fantasy author of the Imagine series and the Reborn Mark series. Joining me is producer and co-host Miranda O. She is a contemporary chick lit author of the Chin Up Tits Out series. Normally, she has the privilege and honor of introducing our guest for today. But we don't have a guest. We have many guests. So Miranda, what are we going to do?
We are going to let them introduce themselves because I am known for getting marbles in my mouth when we have one guest, let alone four guests. So I'm going to bring in all four of our guests here, and we're going to get them to introduce themselves before we dive into why we're all here together today. So give me just a bare second. I'd like to introduce Mr. Gary, Mr. Robert, Miss JP, and Miss Jen. Hi, everybody. I am so glad that you're here with me today. So we'll get you guys to introduce yourselves in the order that I brought you in. So Gary, please start us off.
Yes, this is Gary Whitgriff, and I actually won 3 Global Book Awards, which I'm really happy about. I entered my last 3 books, and they came through in 3 different categories. My latest is Destination North Pole, where I biked from central South Dakota to North Pole, Alaska by the Arctic Circle.
Wow. That's fantastic. We've spoken to you in the past before, and coming from the prairies in Canada, when I think of cold and I think of outdoor biking, I don't think I would make it. So the fact that you made it, the fact that you made it and you turned it into a story, and that story was very highly recognized, is absolutely fantastic. So we are going to dive a little bit deeper into that soon. But let's get over to Robert. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, hi. I'm Robert French. I write the Cal Rogan Mysteries about a drug-addicted ex-cop who, in the series of books, starts off living on the streets and then turns himself into a much sought-after private eye. The latest book in the series, the 7th book, is Jailed, and it won the gold medal for crime thrillers. So I was stunned and delighted to get that.
Wow.
That's fantastic. I love that. Again, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that soon. But please, JP, let's shoot you off next.
Thanks, Miranda. Nice to be here. So my name is JP McLean, and I write urban fantasy and supernatural thrillers. I have 9 books out, and my 9th book is the one that won the Global Book Award, the one that we just received. And it was a lovely surprise and a thrill and a real boost to my confidence. So great to be here.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can't wait to get into this Global Book Awards. But Jen, let's finish off the introductions with you, last but definitely not least.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be among such literary glitterati. I am very excited that my first book, The Big Power of Tiny Connections, won gold for business communication skills.
Wow.
And it is a book that I wrote to support my executive coaching and my corporate training around connection and happiness and empowerment.
Wow.
That is fantastic. Okay, so let's dive into why you're all here. You are all here because you won a big award, right? You won a big Global Book Award, and I want to dive into what led you to begin this story in the first place, that with the one that we won the award for. So Gary, we'll just keep going in the same order. Sure. Gary, let's talk about you. Where did this idea come from, and how does it feel to win an award from conception to award?
It's fantastic. I actually turned 65 when I was on my book tour relating to ancient series, and I'd always wanted to do a long distance bicycle ride. I asked my wife if she would go long, and she said, not 3,000 miles. That's a little too far, but she would drive. So she went ahead, never camped once. And when we were shut down in COVID, I go, I like writing. I'm going to write the story. And so it turned out we went to North Pole, Alaska, where my niece and nephew lived. And I wrote the travelogue, which took silver. silver in the Global Book Awards for travel adventure.
Amazing.
That's fantastic.
Destination North
Are we
Pole.
allowed to ask a couple questions? Like,
I think so, Jen. I can feel the questions like burning out of you right
Okay.
now. So please, I will facilitate and encourage this.
Thank you. I mean, I'm absolutely excited to get to JP and Robert, honored, but I do feel like I'm a cyclist. I bike in Manhattan all the
Wow.
time.
Great.
And, in Ottawa, I grew up biking, and I grew up biking in other countries. So could you just give us a little idea of like where you bike to and from, how many kilometers, and what kind of temperatures you're dealing? Because like, you say Arctic, and I'm like,
I bike to the Arctic Circle, or just shy of the Arctic Circle, from central South Dakota, Pierre. Most people outside of South Dakota would pronounce it Pierre, our state capital. And it's just under 5,000 kilometers. And so my book is Destination North Pole, 5,000 kilometers by bicycle. And so just to summarize, I didn't camp. I biked until there was a clean bed. And until I got to Western Saskatchewan, I carried all my bags and stuff with me. And then my wife caught up with me, and she found a clean bed every night and lodging. So I averaged 75 miles a day for 40 days.
wow. Bravo.
Wow, indeed.
What a memory. What a memory. And especially for your wife, I don't want to take the spotlight off of you, but like to wake up and be like, okay, so I'm going to just go down the highway, and the first hotel I find, I'll book us in and I'll see you there, honey. Like, what an experience for her as well. I think just watching you come in and pull into that hotel every single night for 40 days would be something that would make me extremely proud of my partner to accomplish on a daily basis.
It was so wonderful having her there, because there's a lot of dangers. I mean, I literally seen hundreds of black bear and grizzly and wood bison, besides wolves and moose and a lot of other things that can kill you out there. And so it was exciting knowing. Jen, you also asked about when. I thought it was going to take me 2 months. And so I left on May 20th, meaning the longest day of the year was June 20th. And so at least if I got to the Yukon, where I spent about 20% of my time, there would at least be sun at midnight if I was still biking, because I had no camping gear. I just biked until I found a place to sleep.
Wow.
So that's my book, Destination North Pole, 5,000 kilometers by bicycle. Thank you.
and it's a perfect segue to move into you, Robert, but just such an amazing accomplishment. Writing a book is an accomplishment, but doing that itself.
He makes it sound easy, and we all
know. And I'm just thinking about winded biking down the darn road right now.
I hadn't been on the bike for 8 months. I like to hike and stuff. And I just, I come back from Mexico the week before, and I took off. I didn't know if I was going to make it, and I made it, and I wrote the book about it. So thank you.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thanks for sharing, Gary. Robert, please tell us how we came from idea of the story to winning this award.
So I'd just like to say one thing, Gary. I so admire you. When I get on a bike, the first thing I do is fall off it. I'm completely useless.
I only did that once on a trip. Okay.
So my latest book is called Jailed, and it all came out of, I got very interested in the Innocence Project, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. It's the project that helps to get innocent people out of jail, people who've been wrongly convicted. And mostly they get people out of jail using DNA evidence that wasn't used 20 years ago. And now they're able to prove that, in fact, the DNA on the victim was not the DNA of the supposed perpetrator, and they get them out of jail. And I really got interested in this project and donated some money to them. And I thought, it would be really interesting to have somebody in jail for a crime they didn't commit, where the DNA evidence said, oh, yes, they absolutely did commit this crime. And I got kind of interested in that idea, and that's how the book Jailed came about. And at this point in his career, my protagonist, Cal Rogan, is a very successful private investigator. and he's actually quit being a private investigator because of what happened in the previous novel. And he's gone back to his first love of teaching Shakespeare at university. And a student approaches him and says, my brother's in jail for a crime he didn't commit. And that's how it all starts. It gets him back into being a PI. So, and it was a lot of fun to write this book because it has some really interesting twists and turns in it.
It sounds very intriguing, and I'm just loving this panel because everyone writes something different.
Can't hear you, Amanda.
Oh, Miranda.
I'm on mute, sorry. I said it's kind of interesting because it goes to show that, you know, the Global Book Awards, like each of you guys won in different categories. Like they're for somebody who wants to become an author and, you know, aspiring to be a successful author. Like there's awards, there's prizes, there's recognition for all different types of genres out there. So to not be, you know, completely, what's the word I'm looking for, scared of taking that step, that leap of faith to share your story. If it's, you know, if you got a story, write it. And whatever kind of comes up in between in your mind, do it, share it.
If I could just add something, because you just reminded me of something. JP, you mentioned that it's a confidence booster to win the award, and I totally agree. I don't know if all of you feel the same, but many writers that I know and that I've spoken to, we all feel that we're just not that good enough sometimes. And to get an award truly makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. Huge difference. I remember when I won mine, I sat there just stunned. I was like, sorry, can you repeat that? Yeah. Just anything, I need to hear it again. It is a confidence booster. And I think it also has something to do with writing being such an isolating task. You know, you can write a book with somebody, but it's not like you're sitting right next to them conversing while writing. You know, a lot of it is alone time. And so when we have alone time, we get into our heads, we get into those thoughts sometimes. And sometimes those thoughts are a little bit evil and dark, and sometimes they're super awesome and the stark opposite. But to get that award is just that confidence booster. It kind of pushes all those negative thoughts away. So let's segue into JP. Please share a little with us.
Oh, thank you. So I was writing a series prior to the one that won the award. And that series is 7 books about the same character going through a series of adventures. And I've always been drawn to supernatural and paranormal. So that's a series about a secret society of people who can fly. So when I finished that series, I was looking for a new project, and I decided to completely change everything. So all my books are set in Vancouver, which is the part that didn't change. But I was writing in first person. I wanted to try writing in third person. So I tried that. And one person's perspective, the whole first series. So I wanted to try something with different characters' perspectives. So this book is 3 characters' perspectives and a completely different supernatural ability, not quite as much supernatural in it as the first book. So I just did it as something to keep me entertained myself and to keep my writing skills up. I wanted to test myself and try myself. So that was certainly part of it. You asked earlier about what inspired it. And the thing that inspired it was the opening scene for, I believe it was an NBC show called Blind Spot, where a woman is in a duffel bag and she's dumped in Times Square, and they think it's a bomb, but it's a woman, and she unzips herself and she stands up and she's covered in tattoos and she doesn't remember where she got them or why she has them. So that's what inspired me. I kept thinking about how difficult that must be to live with these marks that weren't of your choosing. And in this book, her marks start to disappear, and she's of course quite thrilled about it until she finds out that the marks aren't just birthmarks, they're protection. And when they disappear, she'll lose her protection. So that is the premise of the story. And it's been fun to write. It's been fun to challenge myself with something new. And so the award for me was a little confidence booster that, okay, you can actually do this. You could do first person, and now you can do third person, and you can do different perspectives. So I feel very, very good about that, I must say.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
congratulations.
Yeah,
I like
terrific.
that. I like that. And that opening scene of that show, I never followed through with watching that show, but like the first couple of episodes were just gripping. So if it got you there, then you know that book is going to be equally as gripping. So that's a pretty cool story. Jen, please share with us.
Well, I just want to highlight the fact that I had the exact same reaction, Miranda, to JP's description. I was like, oh, and you did such a nice job of just like flashing back to that. What a powerful opening scene. So it's a nice appetite whetter. Makes me want to read your book as well. So my book, it's like the classic. I took a writing class during COVID because you're like, well, I have this time, and and it was a very interesting 6-month writing program where most of the first 4 months was spent ideating around who we are and deep soul diving. And, you know, we answered questions about what makes us special and unique. And I ended up in this place where I realized my true north, or my, you know, spirit animal, if you were, is Mary Poppins. And if I can manifest something that you need in the exact right moment in a magical way, I want to do that. And so how does that manifest in the real world? It manifests in connection, like extending yourself and building connection with the world around you. And so I wrote this book in 6 weeks. And then my developmental editor, who I've tracked down and I adore, she was like, it's just a lovely book. Your friends will really enjoy it, but you definitely do not need to publish this. And so she came back around and she said, however, if you're willing to completely overhaul and rewrite it, I think there's some great chunks that we can still use. And so I thought about it, and then I rewrote the entire book in another 6 weeks and added a lot of research. And it ended up being really sort of like my MO for how I live. And I realized that it's very powerful if you teach people how to connect with the world around them, and you teach them how to get a job and how to make more money and how to be a better person and how to get invited to more parties, et cetera, et cetera. You're literally handing them the fishing rod for the best damn life they can go out and catch, you know? And so it turned into this really fun, zippy read that normally you wouldn't really throw in a business communication category, but that's what it is. So when I won gold, my response was, hell yes.
Is that good? All right.
Everything else in my category, A, has an incredibly boring cover. And mine is lovely. And B, mine like actually has stories in it. Like every chapter it says, let me tell you a story. And I tell you a story about how whatever I'm explaining actually happened to someone. You know, how they literally like talked to someone on the street and got a better job, how someone introduced someone and they moved, you know, 6,000 miles away and totally transformed their life just because they said something to somebody on a dance floor. You know, it's like that kind of craziness. And that stuff happens all the time. So it's, yeah. So that's how that all worked out. But
I love the Mary Poppins bit.
You guys were all stunned.
My spirit animal is Snoopy. He can do anything, and he does. And he's got some good writing advice.
He does. I like that, Snoopy. Yeah.
Jan, too many. I think you brought fun just into explaining the book. Too many business books are pretty boring. I made a living in business and business management, and I think we need a little spunk or Mary Poppins in these books.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Gary. Like, they are dry, hard reads, like the ones that make your eyes crust over and you're like, oh, I just need to blink. Or if you have insomnia, you read one of those books. Yeah. I feel like I could choose to read your book on the beach with a margarita in my hand and like learn and enjoy at the same time.
I gotta tell you, the weirdest thing for me is like a lot of, introverts are like, oh, this is definitely the tomb to pick up. I'm going to go read this. And then I have some extrovert friends who read it and they actually said that it's changed their game. Like they're actually connecting in different ways. They're reconsidering how they approach people. They reconsider like what they talk about and which moments to like connect with the world around them. And the nice thing is, I've had enough conversations with people where they don't know how to take that step into connecting. Yeah. And so I do broad strokes, but then I also just make it really easy. I'm like, like my favorite tip in the whole book is probably you go to any event, party, wedding, networking thing, and there's that moment where, especially if you go alone, you're like, ugh, really? Must I? I know I'm not the only one. And, I always just tell people, like, stand by the bar with your drink in your hand or whatever it is you're doing. And when people come away from the bar and they're double fisting because they're going to go meet their friends, sort of plant yourself and say, hey, I came alone, which freaking sucks. And I'm standing here feeling like a loser. Can I come talk to you guys? I'm great. You know what I mean? Like, be vulnerable, own the horribleness of the moment. Like, at the end of the day, everyone knows how that feels, right? So they're going to be like, oh, yeah, sure, come on over. And just like that awkwardness, it's gone.
Gone.
Yeah.
Totally.
Great examples, really good examples.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All of us have things that we're kind of stuck in our ways. And so when you see people changing by what you write, I think that's fantastic. And JP, I want to go back to you because you mentioned writing 3 different perspectives at the same time. Are they combined, or do you move on? And I find that fascinating.
They're each one gets their own chapter, so I intersperse the chapters. So it's her, him, her, him, her, and there's like 2 women and one fella.
Okay.
And the hardest part of that is keeping them individuals. Yes. That's the hard part. Is you have to be able to identify who is speaking without a description of what they look like. So
Jen, are you writing first person then?
Me?
Yes.
Yes, I wrote first person, and then a lot of the stories were interviews of other people. So if it was my story, it was shared from the first person. But then if it was a story for another person, 99% of everybody's names were changed. Sometimes even towns were changed if I wasn't sure they were going to let me use the story. messed with the outcomes. But yeah, I'm curious, JP, did you write character outlines almost like a show Bible before you started? So you had did you go back and review the characters and like their little personas as you began to write each section? How did that work?
Yeah, I started off because I had the previous series. I knew what I didn't want. I didn't want anyone like any of those characters. So that was a bit of a starting point. So as I had an idea. So the roommate is a hooker. The main girl with the marks is not. She's straight. She's works at a garden center, and the fella is a bartender. So I had those basic things down pat. And as the story developed, the storyline makes you have to go back and do certain things. These 2 women have to be in really good shape, so to do what they do in the book. So I have to go back and add in some scenes that would justify the physical action that they're doing. So they belong to a gym. They go running all the time. They spar in the park. She's really good with a knife. So it develops. It doesn't come out whole right off. It just develops. And I keep adding. I do have a Bible. The Bible's got every location in it, every character, every minor character, how they met, distances between 2 different places, and I keep adding to that as I go along.
Very good.
So unfortunately, we only have so much time left, and it's breaking my heart. And I know Miranda's weeping in the corner there. And this podcast, the audience is definitely readers, and we have enticed them to go out and explore all the wonderful things that you guys have published for and so many different genres and things like that. But the other half of our audience is writers, beginning writers, want to be beginning writers, or whatever stage they are. So before we wrap up, it would be so nice if you could share some a tidbit of writing advice, something that you would tell them if they want to get started or want to go further?
I can start.
Yeah, of course.
It's because this is how I started. I never thought I would have an idea big enough for a book, and so I never did it. But what I didn't realize is you don't need an idea big enough for a book. You start with something really little, something that really excites you, one scene. Like maybe you're inspired by something you watched on TV or commercial, something you read in the newspaper, and then just write that one scene. And I think people that really are writers and want to be writers, that one scene will take them many, many places.
Can't agree with you more. Than perfect piece of advice.
I'm nonfiction. All my books are nonfiction. I started out writing organizational directories because there wasn't any, and then I started writing ideas, and I have 6 patents, and so I started writing patents. So my suggestion, and then I got into nonfiction books, my Relating to Ancient series. So what I would suggest is whatever you like, write about it and get into detail about it and feel comfortable with your writing and try to continue to improve it.
Very true. Well, Miranda and I write very different things. She writes for adults. I write for teens or children. She writes, more realistic fiction versus, right? And that's okay. I tried poetry for like a decade, and every editor, every publisher was like, "You are way too wordy, way too prosy." And I was like, maybe I should be a novelist. And things went so much better once I realized that just wasn't my niche. I was not meant. I'm meant to be a writer. Yes. Not meant to be a poet. Okay.
Maybe
right?
you're poetic with your novel words.
Yeah. But you can be a writer, and not every genre is going to be for you. Exactly. Or not every, length of, fiction, nonfiction.
Mm-hmm. There's one piece of advice that I would humbly offer people. I started writing in 2003, and it took me 6 years before I got a book that was good enough to be published. And I think that was 6 years where I started writing because I read voraciously. I used to read books and say, gee, I could write a better book than that. And transpires I couldn't. So you need to really learn the craft and be passionate about the craft. The words that I put on the page are the things that I'm most passionate about now. And I was lucky enough to find a mentor who was an editor, a wonderful person, and she mentored me first through the first 2 of the Cal Rogan books. And but for anyone who's a writer, don't assume that you know how to write. You may have a degree in literature, but don't assume you know how to write, especially if you're writing a novel. Learn everything you can learn. There are some wonderful books on the art of writing. Donald Maass writes terrific books on how to put tension in every page of your work. So become passionate about the craft of writing, because you'll get inundated with, when you start, especially if you self-publish, you're going to become inundated by people with ideas on how to be successful at self-publishing. But the thing that matters more than that is that your craft is excellent, because that's what will make people want to read your books. You can use all sorts of marketing tricks to get your first book into somebody's hands, but unless it's a damn good book, they're not going to read the second one.
Yep. Can't agree with you more.
And I'm going to offer an even more fundamental tip. I mean, yes, write well. I agree completely. I think that the key for me was committing to a word count. And I wrote 6 days a week, and I wrote 1,800 words. And the goal was to get it done in 6 weeks. And I held myself to that, and I got a book done. And all the people that were writing in that period who did not. And they still don't. They still don't have their books. So if you are committed to writing a book, I think the number one thing that you can do is commit to the days, commit to the word count, and actually show up for your words. And, figure out what's the timeline. If you have kids and a job, etc., and you can only write one night a week and you're only going to get 2,000 words in, that one night, which is going to be a very long night, in my opinion, you're going to be writing for at least 20 days to get to 40,000, right? But at the very least, once you have that 40,000, I strongly encourage people to lean into skilled editors, people who can come in and can actually take a pass and look at it, but you have to get it down. This like willy-nilly, like painting in the sky, it's not going to move your book forward. So show up, keep a calendar, and really like honor the word count.
You can't edit a blank page. And there are a lot of people that have that wish. I want to write a book someday. I want to write a book one day. But there's a difference between a wish and a goal. And a goal has specifics. It has deadlines. Now, I mean, everyone has a slightly different style. I don't have word count goals, but I know a lot of authors that do a lot, but I'm still committed, right? I will open that laptop so many days a week. There's a famous Canadian author who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, but Stuart McLean, who I met, and he said, writing's fun, but it's also really hard. And you're going to avoid it because eating chips on the couch is way easier than writing a book. So put yourself in a position where you have to write. And I mean, if you're a really high profile author and you are with the big 5 publishers, they're going to set deadlines for you and they're going to be calling you. But for 95% of the authors out there, you have to set your own deadlines and you have to, keep on track of yourself. So totally true, Jen, and definitely shared by some of the more successful authors around the world, or that put yourself in that position where you will make yourself right. Otherwise, it's chips on the couch. And
show up for yourself, definitely. And the feeling, like we all heard each and every one of you say how good it feels to win this award after putting all this effort in. So literally showing up for yourself, you're gonna reap the rewards of it at the end of the day. So just
thank you.
It's a beautiful note to end on. So thank you all for coming and sharing your time with us and with each other. We really, really appreciate it. Miranda's going to throw all the links you sent her into the show description when she publishes. Is that the right word, Miranda? Publish the podcast?
This will sound really official.
When she publishes this podcast, she will ensure that all of those links that you've sent her are in the podcast description. So thank you so much. Thank you to our show sponsors, Mickey Mickelson with Creative Edge and Writers Corner Network, and a big, big shout out to all our viewers and all our listeners. You're what makes this show happen. So thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Hello.
Great
Thank you.
job.
Thank you. Thank you.